Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. I myself am feeling a little bit tired. Not sure why. Probably my stupid, crazy sleep schedule. Probably. Ah, boy. That's where, though, I got some very healthy tea. Which I'm sure is in some way or another very unhealthy for me. And I will be yelled at. It's crazy how my tweet about people being crazy about something caused a lot of crazy reactions to that tweet. Specifically, one guy was very passionate, but still. I actually muted him after I told him have a good day because I knew in my heart of hearts, I just had that gut feeling that it wasn't going to be worth my time. And according to all the other tweets that I could see that were responding to his tweets that I couldn't see, I feel like I was right on the mark. I feel like ZombieGrub do good. I think there was that guy was the worst Borsty, and then one other guy just made like one small comment. You know, like, oh, it is, but it is unhealthy or whatever. Which was not at all what my I don't think my tweet actually ever used the words healthy. Let me check real quick. Consumption, kidney failure. That sort of, yeah, no, my tweet actually never even mentioned the words healthy. Zombie and WCS Katowice. It's no longer WCS, my dude. To be clear, it was never called WCS Katowice. Maybe technically it was supposed to be, but I'm pretty sure it was always IEM Katowice because IEM was like, no, we want to call it IEM. Unlike DreamHack, which kind of was like, yeah, sure, whatever, call it WCS Fall. It was WCS Fall at DreamHack Montreal. Which rhymes. But anyway, it's definitely not WCS anymore. WCS is a dead system. And it's a dead acronym. Referred to only in the past tense. Will I be at Katowice 2020? Been over this before. We're really not allowed to talk about it, even if we do know. We're not supposed to say anything. And it's very likely that the person you're asking doesn't even know. They could be getting the email in a couple weeks, but don't be shocked to learn that people get emails like even 2 weeks before the event asking if they can do it. It's happened. Do I speak Spanish? No. More like W deadass. Got him. It's a good one. Thank you everyone for tuning in. It's always nice. We can talk about movies and crazy people on Twitter. That guy was really passionate. Again, as far as I could tell, the amount of tweets he made. If anyone has not watched 12 Angry Men, be warned, we are going to be talking about spoilers. It's really hard to talk about a film without talking about spoilers, but I'm just saying it because maybe there are some podcasts where they try specifically to avoid spoilers. Kudos to them. Now, we're definitely going to be talking about spoilers. It's more than a 50-year-old movie, I think, at this point, so that's definitely on you for not already watching it if you're afraid of getting spoilers. But in the off chance you're like, well, I know this was happening. I do this every week. I talk about it on Monday. So I watch the movie some point in the previous 7 days. And talk about it. Yeah, with chat. So there's your warning. This week is 12 Angry Men. I do upload these to YouTube as well, where you can continue the conversation. I do comment to my YouTube comments when they're interesting anyways. 1957, so yeah, 60... No, even more than that. Yeah, that's a long time. All right. Yeah, it's big. I had to watch it in school. Didn't have to watch it in school. I watched a couple of movies that I liked in school, but I don't even remember them, to be honest. The one I do remember is when I slept through, which is kind of funny. Like, I slept through the one, and I remember that one. Yeah, I slept through, oh, was it called Good Night and Good Luck? Or something like that? StarCraft might have contaminated my brain. It was like, it was a movie made fairly recently, like in the last 20 years, but it was in black and white. Anyways, I slept through that one. So, 12 Angry Men, apparently made in 1957 here. I knew the premise, and I had heard people talk about it in, hold on here. I'm going to change one thing. All right. So, yeah, I heard people talk about it, of course, because it's a very famous film. And I've seen a lot of people even, like, argue vehemently that it's, like, that now it's considered the best film. I think at one point it was always, like, Citizen Kane's the best film, Citizen Kane's the best film, a movie I watched. I did not think Citizen Kane was that great of a film. It was interesting enough, I suppose. But I've actually been, like, disappointed by many old films that are heavily praised. Didn't think Casablanca was that good. Didn't think Citizen Kane was that good. I don't like It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah. But of the old movies I have watched and I liked, I did like the Bates Motel one, which I forget the name of right now. And Vertigo. And a few others I can't remember right now. Yeah, so it's like, I like them, but, you know, honestly, amongst the like, top 100 movies you have to see before you die, I've been disappointed by many of them. What state are you from? Rather not say. Psycho, thank you, exactly. Yeah, I like Psycho. I thought that was great. Even though, like, the whole, like, it's like, the twist is super well known, I still really enjoyed the movie. Anywho, yeah, I didn't be disappointed, but then 12 Angry Men. 12 Angry Men. 12 Angry Men. I was like, it seemed like an interesting premise. The way that it was described as being directed was also interesting to me. And yeah, it's kind of bumped up recently, it feels like in the last 10 years, to be everyone's considered #1 movie ever made. So I was like, let's see what the hype is about. And I watched it. It's like an hour and 30 minutes. You can get it on many different platforms for, like, rent. But unfortunately, it's not like on Netflix or Hulu or anything. So I paid the $3. It was fine. And I was really impressed. I wasn't, like, blown away. Like, oh my god, my life has changed. But I was really impressed with it. So the way, like, a couple of things about it, for people who've never watched it but are still interested. It is, I mean, exactly, like, if you've ever read any synopsis, it's, like, it's very, very close to it. So 12 jurors go into a room, and they have to decide if this kid is innocent or guilty. And initially, it's like, everyone thinks the kid is guilty. There's a little bit of racism, because the kid's, I guess, I'm pretty sure they were, like, hinting he's Hispanic. And he looks Hispanic, but you literally only see him, like, once in, like a fade out. But they'd always refer to, like, the fact that they lived in the slums and those people. And there was definitely a scene where the old guy went on that kind of racist rants, and everyone was just like, this is uncomfortable. I'm not sure he was Italian, because that's why I did say I'm not sure if he was Hispanic. I don't think he's Italian just because they had the guy in the room who was, I thought, Italian. But now I really don't know. They had a juror in the room who was not, like, born and raised in America. He had an accent. Free with Prime. There you go. I missed out. Maybe it depends on your country, too, I suppose. So anyways. So I'm gonna, like, the point is, like, they're a bit racist, I guess, no matter how you chalk it up. Or at least a couple people are, but that certainly always, it contributes to almost everyone in the room's thought process. even if they're like not as racist. But you know, prejudice exists. Like literally one of the lines in the movie. So there's this level-headed guy, the only guy who says that he's not guilty, or at least he has reasonable doubt. So they're always hammering that home, right? That the whole point of our justice system is that you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt that they're guilty. And this kid is also going to go to death row. So 11 jurors say that he's guilty, 1 doesn't, and they're all like, you're crazy. They do a really great job at, it literally is all in this room. The direction is all in this room. There's a ton of like single shots where they just follow the same guy around. Very few cuts, which I could certainly have a discussion with people on how maybe like a lot of movies today overuse cuts, and it's kind of insane. Literally, like, one of my critiques of the Lord of the Rings movie is that I really don't like the cuts they use. But anyways, very few cuts in the movie, so like it adds to the strength of the acting, and there's some very strong actors in it as well. Some that are certainly famous actors and had famous children, children making famous actors. And they all did a very good job. So this one guy is like, I have a reasonable doubt. And he's kind of like wishy-washy. He's like, I just know that this might not actually be the case. Like, this could have been something different, right? And the 11 other jurors, some go from, like, hard belief in the facts to having their own issues and are projecting that on the kid, and just kind of go with the crowd. Like, there's a whole range of the different type of characters and jurors that you would see. Lord of the Rings. I had issues with the cuts in Lord of the Rings. But anyways. There's a bathroom as well. Yeah, they have a bathroom that they use once, and there's a scene in there. Otherwise, there's a brief scene of like the courtroom where they're getting they're being told, you know, the rules of coming to a verdict. And then there's a room outside at the end. So the other thing is that you don't know the names of any of these jurors until the very end. You learn 2 of their names, which has always been a point that people have brought up with it.
Apparently you are doing something right, Captain.
Thank you, Thongya, for the 4-month resub. Anyways, so there's like a diverse like panel. They're all white guys except, well, I mean the guy's white, but they're all older white gentlemen, except for one guy who is still white, but yeah, I think he's Italian, who I guess is an immigrant, but still a citizen, obviously, for going on the juror. But he's like, at one point that's kind of brought up. They come from different backgrounds as well. And the initial setup is very like, this guy is so dumb. Obviously the guy did it. And I was totally on that side. You know, I knew there was going to be the twist, just because there wouldn't be an interesting story if it was like, all of them were like, oh, I see your point, but also he's still guilty, and that's the end of the movie. I definitely expected him to go the other way, which they all eventually did. But I was kind of just like sitting there like, well, this is going to be interesting to see how they prove to me why this kid is not guilty. Because they had 2 witnesses, and they unfold this over their conversation too. There's never a point where they're like, they sit down. It's that, again, there's never anything in the courtroom. You don't watch the courtroom. You don't watch the defendant talk. You don't watch the witnesses talk. It's all in the room for the jurors, and they just unfold the story. Initially, they mention that there's 2 witnesses, and then, you know, midway through the movie, they say actually what the witnesses saw. The classic trope that is always referenced in, like, comedy movies about, like, if someone needs to wear glasses or not came from this movie. One of the guys who's still stuck on the, like, the logical side of things, he's like, look, this woman said she saw the kid kill his father through the windows of a train at night across the train tracks. And then the old guy, one of the old guys, like, points out that he is like he's rubbing his neck, the bridge of his nose, and then says that the woman had the marks of wearing glasses but didn't want to wear glasses at the courtroom because plenty of women think they look worse with glasses, and she wanted to look really young and good. And then that convinced him that she wasn't wearing her glasses at night because she was, like, in bed. And, yeah, no one wears their glasses in bed. So that cliche came from that. Yes, 12 Angry Men. But it was well done enough. It was also kind of one of the last straws. One of the things, they had like a lot of things set up. There's so many like, how to put it? There's so many strings that unfold in the movie, which almost like is a characteristic of a lot of really good movies, especially standalone movies. Maybe not so much in movies that are like, you know, action movies or fantasy, like epic tales and stuff like that. But like in a lot of movies, you'll see something that when you rewatch a movie, there'll be all these little signs. There'll be like all these little like, wow, that the whole movie had a beginning, middle, and end, but all these mini plots also had a beginning, movie, and end, middle, and end. And 12 Angry Men had a lot of those. I can tell you really like this movie. Yeah. Unlike the last two movies I watched, which I didn't really like. Am I going to watch it over and over again? Maybe not. But honestly, there was also some really strong performances that I would probably watch it because it did get like emotional and like really hit you. But they set them all up, so it's like, you know, a lot like one problem for watching old movies is that because they were there before everything was so common, you can kind of see these things a mile away, and it's like, oh, okay, this has been overdone, even though they might have been the first ones to do it. So a lot of these things were obviously going to be handled by the end of the movie, but they still think they really did it very, very well. 12 Angry Men. I try to think about which character I was the most like. I realized there's a bit of all 12 men in me. Yeah, they did a very good job of just making 12 different types of people. Like, they're all pretty unique. You can remember each one by their character, even if you don't remember their names. I'm not sure which one I would fall under. But at some point, they all get convinced that the kid isn't guilty. So the logical guy with the glasses is one of the last to fall. And then the guy who's... This guy isn't racist, but he clearly has some issues. So that's another thing it kind of handled that you don't see old movies usually do well. Like, another problem with watching anything old, like even 20 years ago old, it's like you can... There's overt transphobia. There's overt homophobia. There's overt, like cultures changes, just, you know, the concept of beating your kids is like, well, as long as they're doing it sparingly, it's for their own good, is something that you could hear in old movies, and just, like, now it'd be like, because, well, actually, first of all, a lot of people nowadays still think it's okay to, like, hit your kids, and it's just weird, but anyways. But I think this movie actually handled it very well. For coming out 70 years ago, that's insane. I was like the antagonist, so I get smart from watching things like this. So I'm assuming you're talking about the angry dad. Which is like, it is, that's like, they don't really deal with sexism. They don't have to deal with sexism, everyone's a man. Not really anyways. They bring up the woman wanting to look beautiful, but I thought that was actually very fair. You know, they didn't even, like, ham it up. Like, no one guy was like, yeah, woman, right? They just care only about their looks. They made a very valid point, which is that she would probably care about how she looked. And I would say that's true. Like, could you say that for all women? No. But they pointed out other reasons she seemed to want to look younger, other than just being like, woman, am I right, guys? But they did deal with racism. So, you know, they always and they dealt with, I guess, class issues as well. So there's a scene where he's like, you know how these people are, they all live in the slums, you know, slums are breeding grounds for violence. And then one of the guys there is like, well, I come from a slum and I'm not violent. And they have to kind of deal with the whole awkward fallout of like, oh, well, not you know, just other people. And then they have there's like two really, really old guys, and one of the old guys goes on like a racist rant at one point. Like, he's like the third to last to fall or something. And they literally just have every guy, including the guy who's kind of the antagonist, They even have him get up from the table and walk away. They just let him, like, tire himself out until he sits down and eventually admits he also thinks the kid's not guilty. Hating your kids isn't allowed anymore? I mean, hating your kids isn't that good either. But the antagonist is one of the guys who is very strongly in belief that this kid is guilty from the get-go. He's, like, already made up his mind. He goes along with the logical side of things for a while, but even slips up with his own, like, his attempt to logic things out actually works against him at some points, and there's some really cool scenes where, like, at one point they're like, the one of the witnesses is like an old guy that has a limp, and they're like, they can't possibly move from this point to that point. He said that he moved there in 10 seconds. We think that's unlikely. They do their little test. They can't make it in 10 seconds. And the guy starts yelling that, like, he's old, like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And they're like, exactly, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, he's old, he can make mistakes. And then he's like, no, he can never make mistakes. It's not a mistake. It's definitely 100% the way it is. And then when they point out that it took him, like, 21 seconds or whatever to get from A to B, he's like, he's old, he doesn't remember. And then he just has to, like, kind of sit down and, like, shut up because of his own words. And then later, someone said that one of the witnesses said they heard the kid say, like, I'm gonna kill you to the dad. And they're like, well, you can say that and not mean it. And the guy's like, no, 100% this kid meant it. And then later he, like, bursts his top open and goes to, like, strike one of the main characters and yells, I'm gonna kill you. And the main character's like, but you don't actually mean it, do you? And you're like, oh, shit. Got him. Oh, damn. That was pretty good. The bits where he slips up are done so well. Yeah, that actor was really good. I guess it's another thing that I find common in older movies. Like, the way that they acted was so different. And I'm sure there's a lot of reasons for that. But it still is like a very big contrast usually to how, I guess, you know, nowadays we like our actors to act. And it usually also just takes away, in my opinion, from the movie. Because I'm like, that was weird. Like, that woman wouldn't do that. But these characters were all pretty good. The only critique I have is that the guy who was like, yeah, I don't know if he's guilty, and he was the protagonist in a way, he might have been a little too much of an angel. He basically did nothing wrong. He was, like, basically a Gary Sue. Which is it's just a joke. Like, it's not fair to say that he is, because you don't see enough of these people's lives to say anything. You just see the 1.5 hours they're in this room. But the guy who causes everyone to change their minds and goes through everything, he's logical, he's smart, he's good-natured, he's calm, he's obviously got a soft spot, like, he's an optimist, like, all these, like, good qualities. And I don't recall him ever having a bad quality. You could only say his bad qualities that he's a little uncertain, which is just, you know, if he wasn't uncertain, it wouldn't be realistic. I also like the bit where someone went, I don't care about the facts. Yeah, there's some relevance here today. So having any men is that Democratic primary? I mean, the Democratic primary definitely has not just men. It's not even that good of a joke. I'm sorry to tell you. Anyways. So at the end, like, you very early on, the antagonist, because it's hard to say that, but it is kind of the case. The main duel between two sides is between the good person and the guy who's, like, totally obsessed with basically killing this kid, but putting this kid on death row. And yeah, there's a scene where he's like, I'm gonna kill you, and he's like, you don't really mean it, and he backs down. There's a scene very early on where he talks about kids and how kids are today, which is just always funny to listen to, because it's absolutely true. Every generation will say kids these days in a derogatory way. Even I do it. Usually not seriously, though. Usually I just make fun of their memes. But he's like, kids these days, you know, I used to call my dad sir. And, you know, when's the last time your dad called, you know, you called your dad sir, talking to someone, like, younger than him. And he, like, threw a picture. He showed a picture of his kid, and he was like, you know, my kid ran away from a fight, and I was so embarrassed. I promised myself I'd make a man out of him, and I did. And then he was 18. He got into an argument, and I hit him. Or no, he hit him, actually. My son hit me. And then he said that he hadn't spoken to his kid in 2 years. And he kind of, like, trails off saying, like, you do your best for your kids, and he kind of trails off, and it's clear he's got some issues. So that kind of plays a very obvious part throughout the entire argument. But the ending is very... The ending is the climax, basically. You could, I guess, maybe argue the climax is, like, one of the earlier scenes where the guy gets really angry. But I would say that the climax was basically at the end of the movie. Because everyone's, like 11 out of 12 are for the not guilty now, except that guy. And he starts yelling and just saying, like, you're changing the facts. You don't understand the facts. Like, how can you say that she doesn't know? She doesn't know. And he just, like, kind of tires himself out. And then he slams his wall on the table, and the picture falls out. And he picks up the picture and starts, like, tearing it apart. And then just kind of just starts, like, leaning into his arms and starts crying. And especially for a guy who is, like, literally painted by the movie and by himself as the tough guy who is, like, you know, critiquing the newer generation and their emotions and all that. For him to do that was very, very powerful. He's right, though. Gotta respect your elders. I don't think he's right. I've never heard anyone in my generation call their dad sir. Like, I guess maybe you would if they'd been giving you, like, a direct order and you had more of a... You had a bit more of that, like... I want to say, like, militaristic upbringing. I could see it. You know, like, go mow the lawn. Yes, sir. But I think you'd also call your dad dad. Did you not grow up in the South? I mean, technically people consider the state I'm from the South, but you're right, I didn't grow up in the South. But if we're talking about ways that you should treat other people, I'm going to be real with you for a second. The South is a fucking terrible example most of the time. On a surface level, it's okay. Everyone likes the Southern gentleman who's, like, tipping his hat to you and trying to treat you all nice and open the door for you and all that good stuff. And then you mention that you're a lesbian and he fucking smacks you right across the face, don't he? Did I notice a lot of the rest of the country is also really bad? Sure. This isn't really the conversation that I want to have right now, but considering some of the actual facts that come out about a lot of our southern states, like Mississippi and North Carolina, yeah, a lot of the bad stuff comes from there. Republican primaries then? Yeah, Republicans would be 12 angry and old men. So I directed the acting in a big way. Yeah, I know, but I didn't really want to get into that, so I just glossed over it. As I said, there's many reasons why old movies are different. Some of the just because, you know, the way that it came up from different things. It had limitations in certain ways. Culture was actually different in certain ways, but I didn't really want to talk about it. But I really don't think that you get to criticize the younger generation for not calling their parents sir. I think you get to criticize the younger generation for not respecting their elders, but that's a very different thing. And I think a movie that was made so early on, 1957, for it to kind of tackle that in an indirect way, but still, the guy, you know, teaches his kid to be a man, which very much so insinuates that he taught his kid how to fight back and how to fight in general, and maybe did some things with belts. there's a assumption there, but certainly that's kind of the stereotype. For that to be painted in a bad light is really good for an old movie. And for that to not just be painted in a bad light, like, oh, we know that guy's a bad guy, but he doesn't know, for him to even just, like, sit down and realize that he's the one that fucked up and it wasn't his kid's fault was I think, like, very impressive. Not just in a way of, like, wow, the 1950s actually had that, you know, a movie like that, but also just the way it was done, I think, can be applauded no matter what year you watch it in. The eldest man didn't complain about people respecting their elders. Yeah, there's two really old guys in the movie. So there was certainly, like, I guess they even sort of addressed, like, ageism. Right? There's the ageism as in, like, those damn millennials. But then there's, of course, ageism in, like, the opposite direction where, yeah, there's definitely problems with how we treat our elders, especially depending on, like, what culture you come from. At one point, the angry dude, the super angry dude, not all these 12 angry men are actually all angry. The super angry dude yells at one of the nice old man, and another one of the guys who's like just wants to get out because he's going to a ball game, like yells at him and tells him he's gonna like punch him if he disrespects an elder again. And then at one point, the nice old man just kind of like remarks on how being elderly can do X, Y, Z. Because they were talking about the old man witness who had like a limp. Because they're like, not only could he not make it to the window in time, so his testimony already is a bit flaky, but also, and this is what the old man brought up, he was like, also, he might just be doing it for attention. You're alone, you're not taken care of. You haven't done anything in your life. You have nothing but time to reflect back on all the things you haven't done in your life. And you finally get a chance to actually have people pay attention to you. It's very wise. Yeah. But I like, this is a movie that I give this movie, like, in terms of technical, like, you know, the direction and the writing and the acting and causing an emotion and dealing with hard problems and, like, all that stuff, I definitely give this, like, a 9 out of 10 or even a 10 out of 10. I think in many ways it did, like, all those things really perfectly. Because there's even some scenes where I was like, damn, that was really good directing and acting, because they had to act for, like, you know, a full minute and a half straight or something. And they were showing what the, how long it would take the limp to affect the guy who was going to the room. And of course, I already went over the acting being very good as well. But in terms of, like, you know, my personal feelings to it, I would still give it like an 8 out of 10, which is still very, very good, but there's no accounting for taste, right? There's no accounting for how much it personally affects you and all that. But if that means, you know, on average it's a 9 out of 10, then that's a pretty fucking, that's still like a really fucking good movie. I can certainly see why people say this is one of the best movies ever made, which I did not really see why they said that about Citizen Kane. I know one of the arguments for Citizen Kane is that it's one of the only movies to ever do like time jumping very well, which I'll agree to that. And not time jumping like goddamn Back to the Future, guys. Like, like actually going back and forth in a person's life. 2 different time periods shown simultaneously. And that's fine. But otherwise, it just didn't really have a lot of other things to remember about that movie. Where I feel like I'll remember a lot of the ways they did a lot of things well in 12 Angry Men. So there's the review. There you have it. If you guys haven't watched it, I heavily advise watching it. Apparently it's free on Prime in some countries. Otherwise, it's like $3 to rent on some other sources. And you can technically sail the 7 seas. I'm not even sure who like owns the movie. Who's even getting money for the movie? People standing around and talking. Sometimes I feel like movies do a thing because they can say they did that thing. You know what I mean? Like a very obvious example is like Avatar can say that they were the, you know, like 80% of it was CGI or some shit. Like they were the forefront of technology, and that's cool. And it was an okay movie. It was a blockbuster. It was fine. But the 12 Angry Men, all being in one room, or 1.5 rooms, I guess, including the bathroom, I actually thought wasn't just impressive, but actually added to the atmosphere. You know, like they start like another big thing that's like very just push in your face almost is that it's the hottest day in New York, so they're all sweating because they're also wearing like 50s clothes, so they're all like in 3-piece suits. They're all sweating. Nothing, like the fan won't work initially as they're not working together, and then the fan starts to work as they start to work together, and it's like, whoa, man, calm down. It starts to rain, which just adds the humidity and the uncomfortableness, and all the silences get louder because the rain's in the background. Like, it's all like pretty, I would say, obvious stuff, and again, they kind of like really push that into your face. They're uncomfortable, you're uncomfortable, they want to get out, you want to get out. But it works very well. Forces conflict because they can't really escape. Yeah. There's versions of 12 Gray Men, with, I guess, without the bathroom scene. Bathroom scene didn't really add very much. It was kind of one of the scenes that made the really good character maybe doubt himself for a second, but not even really. Again, that character was overtly a good guy. Yeah, they eventually get out of some of their clothes, but they're still in their long pants and button-up shirt, which some of them probably still even had undershirts under that. Might have rolled up the sleeves and undone a few buttons, but ugh. I feel like if the air conditioning didn't work on the hottest day in summer, when they're all stuck in their room for 12 hours plus, I feel like nowadays you'd get people just being like, look, okay, can we all just agree that we can take off like everything but our like undershirt and underwear? And they'd be like, yeah, okay, let's do it. I think that it talks about how movie does conflict resolution really well. Sure. There's just so many things that I think are that nowadays people would look back on and be like, yeah, that's how you deal with that. Or yeah, that's how that would realistically play out. Or like, yeah, that's how you would confront someone who's a little bit racist. You confront someone who's generally a hothead. Or that's how someone would realize that they're wrong. You know, it doesn't feel aged, really, except that it's in black and white and everyone refuses to take more clothes off. Even though it's really fucking hot. So the I'm a teacher end reveal. I guess I didn't really put a lot of thought into the ending. Obviously, there's the big shock and awe that you finally realize you didn't even know their names. I already knew you didn't know their names because it's a very common talking point about the movie. Is like, isn't it just amazing how you don't know their names till the end? It's almost like a spoiler, you know, but not really. So I was just like, oh yeah, there's the names. Wow. Oh my god. I didn't even really pay attention to what him saying I'm a teacher would mean in terms of his character throughout the entire movie. I didn't really like Saving Private Ryan as much as everyone else in the world did. That was a good movie, don't get me wrong, but it was worth the rental and not worth the buy. What movie is next? That's a good question. Hold on. Got a list here. I never once wondered what all these guys did, really. They kind of, some of them mentioned it, some of them didn't. There's like a minute-long scene where he had a conversation with one of the other guys, and the other guy, like, explained how he was a teacher. Or he wasn't a teacher, he was a coach. I was 100% in on, like, how do they convince everyone that this kid didn't do it? Because they really do set it up so that you also are kind of with everyone else in the beginning saying that that one guy's an idiot. That, like, how in the world can you refute 2 witness testimonies, the same knife being used to kill the dad, the motive was valid, the dad was an abuser, and the kid could kill him. Like, how could you say that that kid didn't do it? Are you doing like a movie club? That's why the title's called Movie Club. That's why the channel in Discord's called Movie Club. That's why I tweeted Movie Club. Yeah. But the there's a newish one? I didn't even know there's a newish one. A new 12 Angry Men? $1997. Oh, yeah. I didn't even know. Literally, when I typed 12 Angry Men into Google, every result was the old one. There you go. It is a movie that doesn't really need remaking. It really is. To all the points I just said. Okay, I'm looking up for the next movie. Okay, so we saw that. We saw Midsommar. And Muriel's Wedding. Do something more recent. I'm gonna watch The Shawshank Redemption. Can we suggest movies? Nope. If I ever run out of movies, then you can suggest it. Yeah, I've heard really great things about Shawshank Redemption. It's so relatively recent. Definitely not super recent. Said please. What does that matter? It's, recent is relative. I was born at some point. What a silly question. I hope you guys enjoyed Movie Club. You can always join the Discord, by the way, if you want to talk about it. You can just use spoilers until I actually discuss the movie on stream. I just watched a movie that was 70 years old, so Shawshank Redemption's recent enough. Thanks, Gimblebee. Thanks for taking part. I think it's fun, and I can talk for hours about nothing, so might as well talk an hour about something. Yeah, I enjoy movies. I think I've watched more movies than maybe the general public, but definitely not a lot of movies compared to people who really like movies. Amongst my general group of friends, I'm the one talking about movies a lot. Amongst, like, other names, like, you know, Maynard knows more movies than I do, and you know, Twitch chat obviously comes in. They know a lot of movies. My mom and I